Hey folks, it's Gary Karp, that tarot guy, with your card of the day reflections for Sunday, March 7th. Now, as always, the card of the day reflections comes to you by and is coming through the deck of the Rider-Waite deck. The Rider-Waite deck, again, as I always say, is the only deck that I use. I truly, truly believe it is the only tarot deck you need because really, tarot equals Rider-Waite-Smith. Right? It is because of the ideas that Arthur E. Waite had, and it is because of the illustrations and the arcane and occult knowledge that Pamela Colman Smith hid in plain sight on those images she drew in those cards that makes the Rider-Waite deck so beautiful, so valuable, so smart. And that if you want to really become a master tarot reader, then you've got to learn the Rider-Waite deck. It's not just a beginner's deck. It is the ultimate deck. And if you dive deep into it, I am sure that you will fall in love with the symbology and the history and the structure, and your intuition will just explode. I can say this to you because when I started my tarot journey, I stayed away from the Rider-Waite deck. Matter of fact, for the first year and a half that I read, I never touched the Rider-Waite, even though people would tell me I needed to. Every time I picked it up, I never connected with it. The colors were too pale. They were too light. I didn't like the imagery. It was too old. And all these excuses kept coming into my head. And really, what was going on is I wanted to be spoon-fed everything. I wanted to learn the tarot by osmosis. I wanted to learn the tarot in an afternoon. So I can pick up a book and a deck on a Friday, and then on a Sunday I can wow everybody at a family dinner. And tarot doesn't work that way. If you want to become the master reader, you're going to have to do the heavy lifting. There's no other way around it. But you will be paid back in an infinite fold number because your life will become so much richer and your readings will become so much better. So if you want to become that master tarot reader, then my advice, go grab yourself a book on the Rider-Waite that talks about the history and the imagery and the structure of tarot and just doesn't give you keywords and phrases. Go grab yourself a Rider-Waite deck. Lock yourself into a room for a few hours and dive deep. Believe me, it's worth it. Okay, so I'm off my soapbox. Let's get right into today's card of the day reflections. And it actually goes right into and leans right into what I was just talking about. Our card of the day for today is the High Priestess. Now, the High Priestess to me signifies and talks about hidden knowledge, a higher level of learning. It's all the things that are just out of our sight, just out of our grasp, just beyond our comprehension. No matter how much we learn, there's always going to be more to learn. That's the promise, and maybe the curse, of this High Priestess. Now, the High Priestess is the second archetype, second trump that our Fool meets. The first, of course, being the Magician. And there's a reason our Fool meets these two cards right up front. It's because they represent the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine, the active and the passive energies involved in creation. And that's where all of our worlds start. Right? The Magician, of course, talks about active energy. He talks about bending the universe to your will to create what you want through a sheer strength of physical will. Very similar to the Chariot, who learns about victory through physical strength and strength of will. The High Priestess, on the other hand, talks about the other part of creation, and that is the softer, more receptive, allowing the ideas to come to you, allowing the universe to work through you, to not swim against the current. You know, there's a phrase in Japanese culture called woo-wee. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you can see this, but this pendant that I'm wearing is a woo-wee pendant. And in Zen tradition, woo-wee loosely translates to action through inaction. And that is a lot of also what the High Priestess is talking about. Be receptive. Don't fight. Let it come to you naturally. If you want to learn the skill, yes, you've got to put in the work. Like I said before, if you want to learn tarot, then you've got to read the Rider-Waite. You've got to study the symbols. You've got to learn the structure of the deck and why there's 78 cards as opposed to 82, 83, or 107. Believe it or not, there is a reason. But while you're doing that, you want the knowledge to come to you. You don't want to force it. You don't want to overplay your hand. This is the feminine energy. It talks about the thought energy and mastering our thoughts, mastering our mindset so that we can create the world we want. Now, the imagery on this card is interesting, at least for me. Traditionally, it is said that the High Priestess is sitting in front of the Temple of Solomon. And there is some credence to this because she sits in front of the pillars labeled with a B and a J. That stands for Boaz and Joachim. Sometimes say Joachim. And those were the two angels that guarded the entranceway to the Temple of Solomon, which was the depository of all the knowledge of the ancient world, before the Temple of Alexandria, which I still cry over. Now, our priestess is sitting between them. And you'll notice that there is a yin-yang quality to both of these pillars. This whole image is talking about balance, that we can't drift too far into the abyss of arcane knowledge that the High Priestess represents. And we can't just bully our way or try to bully the universe into what we want. That we've got to use both of them. But the knowledge is here. The High Priestess promises the knowledge if we are ready to take the journey. That's why it appears at the beginning of the Fool's Journey. It's beckoning us. It's challenging us to take that journey. And it's not a simple one, but it is very rewarding. Because what really is going on behind our High Priestess here has nothing to do with the Temple of Solomon. It has to do with our own internal temples. You can see that there's peeking behind the veil and spilling out a little bit and actually becoming part of her robe is water. There's no temple there. There are no rabbis. And the only Torah is the one she's holding. The only thing that's behind the veil is water. Our subconscious, our psychic sense. But it is veiled at this point. Because this early on, as you're starting your tarot journey, you're starting your discovery, self-discovery journey, maybe you're starting to do some shadow work. You're not ready to go behind the veil. There's really nothing guarding you or preventing you from going there. But it is still veiled. Because we're not ready for that much knowledge. Right? That's why it's at the beginning. We will be if we choose to walk this journey and take the path and really learn the language of tarot as a language of introspection and self-exploration. If we do the heavy lifting on ourselves, then eventually, through the journey, we will get to know what's behind the veil. As a matter of fact, We actually get to approach it from the other side a little bit later on down in the majors. We may talk about that later. It's really cool. So remember that our High Priestess promises us the riches and wealth of knowledge of ourself, our subconscious, our connection with the universe. Nothing more, nothing less. But it is mysterious and it is slightly scary. So you have to decide whether or not you want to take that journey. You have to decide whether or not you want to do the heavy lifting and face yourself. Because ultimately, that's what the High Priestess is promising. That's the arcane knowledge that she's hiding. The wisdom of knowing ourself. Well, that's what I got for you today. I hope that you're finding these card of the day reflections enjoyable and valuable. If you are, please do me a favor and visit my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/thattarotguy. And think about dropping $1 in my tip jar. For just that $1 a month, you'll get access to extended card of the day readings where I dive deeper into the meanings of the cards, into the symbology of the cards, and more of the history and explanation of the card. And I also use my life coaching experience and my life coaching certifications to provide practical strategies that you can use to embody the energy of this card and bring it into alignment with who you are so that you can get the most of these learnings every single day. Now, I'm working on some other content on there as well. I've got an unboxing video I'm still working on. I'm in the editing place there. And I'm also thinking about starting a podcast that would be available to my Patreon supporters, where I would just talk about tarot and pop culture and sci-fi and whatever hits me at the time. It may be a rant, who knows. Maybe the podcast will be I'll just pick a card of the day and explain it. Maybe I'll do live readings on the air. I don't know yet. When it comes to tarot content and my Patreon page, that's there for you guys, right? Because you're kind enough to support me. So if you do want to support me, if you want to see a specific piece of content, then do me a favor. Just leave it in the comments below. Tell me what kind of content you would want me to create for you for your tarot journey. The only thing I ask is that when you do this, ask yourself, would I pay $1 for this? Would I pay $1 a month for this? Would I pay $5 a month for this? Because that's really that nominal amount it costs, less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, if you think about it, is all it costs to support me on Patreon and allow me to continue to create this great content for you. So if you want to support me, go ahead, visit www.patreon.com/thattarotguy. Drop $1 in my tip jar. And until tomorrow, be good.